Hello, and welcome to the Interview Skills Online Workshop. In this workshop, we'll talk about the importance of preparing prior to the interview, what to expect during the interview and developing a method to answer some of those tough questions, as well as what to do after the interview is over. Benjamin Franklin once said, "By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail." In regards to interviewing, if you don't put in the effort to prepare for the interview, it will be obvious that you aren't ready and could determine if you get the job or not. Now is the time to brush up on the employer by doing research, starting a list of anticipated questions, practice answering those questions, and possibly even participate in mock interviewing. The more prepared you are, you'll be able to go into the interview with confidence. When the interview is being scheduled, you should be notified who will be interviewing you. LinkedIn is a great tool to look them up to learn how long they've been with the company and understand their background. Research the company. How do they align with your values and goals? Use the Deed website, LinkedIn, the company's website, social media, Glassdoor, and other online resources to learn as much as you can about the company. While researching the company, you should be preparing specific questions that not only relate to that organization, but to also engage the interviewer in a positive conversation. It's essential to prepare questions prior to the interview. Preparing and asking thoughtful questions can help you to connect with the interviewer, understand the culture of the organization to determine if it's truly a place you want to work, show the interviewer that you are already thinking about how you can help the company in this position, and end with a strong close. So here are some examples. To connect with the interviewer, you could ask questions like, how did you come to work here? What do you love most about working here? If you would like to determine if the company culture is right for you, ask questions such as, who's the most successful hire you've made recently, and why has that person been very successful in their role? You can also ask, who didn't succeed and why? It's also good to ask questions in order to understand the challenges the company faces, such as, what's the company's biggest challenge this year, and how will this job help overcome it? How will I measure my own performance so I know I'm having a positive impact on this challenge? And finally, you want to close on a high note and establish next steps. What additional skills or experience do you feel I need in order to be successful in this role? What are the next steps in the process? There are an infinite number of strong questions you can ask in the interview. These are just a few to give you an idea of the types of questions that you can ask in order to be able to connect with the interviewer, understand the culture, understand the challenges, and then close strong. You should also be able to share how your relevant experience makes you the perfect fit for the company's needs. One way you can do that is by using what's called a T-chart or T-table. This is also a great tool to use when you're creating your resume. Now keep in mind, this isn't something you take to the interview and give to the hiring manager. This is an exercise to help you prepare and show how you are the best fit for the position. First, start by drawing a big T on a piece of paper. List keywords from the job description in the left column, and then in the right column, write out your accomplishments or experiences that match with that keyword or phrase. For example, the employer is looking for someone experienced with recruiting team members. The individual preparing to interview for this position could match their skills by recognizing their achievement of exceeding recruiting goals at their previous position by recruiting at job fairs and sourcing from numerous job boards. This process would help to give you a clear picture of how you fit this position and prepare the talking points needed for the interview. And what does mental preparation have to do with preparing for the interview? Well, employers are looking for people with a positive work attitude. You want to be able to find ways to show your enthusiasm for the job, willingness to learn, spirit of cooperation, and respect for the employer. Never say anything negative about your current or previous employers or coworkers. Even if you had a falling out at work or a bad experience, you should still find a way to talk about the situation without speaking unfavorably. What message do you think you're sending the interviewer if you say things like, the last company I worked for was horrible, or my last boss was a nightmare to work for? It's important to rehearse how you'll present yourself. Along with staying positive, it's necessary to always be truthful and realistic. It's not difficult for a competent hiring manager to catch you embellishing on your accomplishments or coming off as fake or vague. We all know the importance of presenting yourself in the best way possible, but there's much more to it than just showering before the interview to make a good impression with your physical appearance. Aside from the obvious things like getting a good night's sleep, shaving, brushing your teeth, combing or brushing your hair, it's a good idea to clean your fingernails, conceal or take out body piercings, be sensible and conservative with makeup, fingernail polish, and jewelry, and of course, leave your sunglasses in the car. You should also be aware of any scents or odors. Avoid smoking before the interview, use deodorant so you don't have issues with body odor, and never wear any fragrances. If you think you'll get away with having a cigarette before the interview and then spray yourself down with Febreze or Axe body spray, you'll only succeed in having two overpowering smells coming off your clothing. Additionally, many companies are now scent-free. Wearing perfume or cologne could cause the interviewer to predetermine that you won't fit in their company culture. Remember to also be mindful of your body language. The way you sit, give eye contact, whether or not you're fidgety or if you smirk, these can all have a huge impact in the eyes of the interviewer. So don't slouch, give eye contact to whomever is speaking, keep your hands in your lap if you tend to fidget, and control your facial expressions. How you dress for the interview can say a lot about your professionalism. Unless you're in an industry that specifically calls for it, be careful to not dress in loud or unprofessional attire. This picture is an excellent representation of appropriate clothing to wear to the interview. Either pants, suits, or skirted suits are appropriate. Skirt length should be at or just below the knee. Make sure your clothing is not too tight and avoid wearing low-cut tops. Wear clean, low-heeled shoes and stay away from faddish clothing. Make sure your belt matches your shoes. Keep facial hair neatly trimmed and match a decent tie to your suit or sports coat. Comb your hair neatly and wear clean and polished dress shoes. Culturally specific attire is absolutely appropriate, as is dressing in a manner that complements your gender identity. It may also be beneficial to match what you wear to the workplace standards. You can look at photos on the company's social media pages or their website to get a sense of what people wear at the office. This can be tricky to do, so if you have any doubt, always choose business professional. You'll definitely send the wrong message if you show up underdressed. You should also research multiple routes to take to the interview in case the main route is inaccessible. Make sure you're aware of any additional instructions from the employer, such as parking specifics or where the company may be located if it's within a multi-business complex. Arrive 10 to 15 minutes before your scheduled interview. Give yourself time to check in with the receptionist, use the restroom if necessary, review your resume, the job description, the questions that you've written down, and collect your thoughts. Be courteous to everyone you meet, even those that aren't interviewing you. It is likely that the hiring manager will even speak with the receptionist to learn their first impression of you. Be sure to utilize navigation apps to predict how long it will take you to get to your interview. If you're not driving, remember to have necessary transportation arranged, whether that be planning to use a rideshare such as Uber or Lyft, money for a cab, or a public transportation schedule. You could also benefit by doing a dry run and driving to the location a day or two prior to the actual interview. Remember, plan the drive to be in traffic at the same time of day as you would be on the day of the interview. Add a buffer for the unexpected. An extra half hour can save the day if you take a wrong turn, get off at the wrong stop, or run into unexpected traffic. Parking can often be a headache, especially in a larger city where parking structures are your only option. Obtain any coordinating instructions from the interview scheduler about where to park and what to expect. Consider whether or not you have to pay before leaving the building. Is there a parking attendant, or is it cash only? Remember to plan for all possibilities so that you're not late. You've put in the work and you're prepared for the interview. It's important to understand what to expect. We'll talk about types of interviews, question preparation, preparing your responses, and answering techniques. Screening interviews are typically done first and by telephone so the employer can save time by identifying candidates that are best suited for the position. They may briefly ask about your education, employment history, and qualifications to determine if you align with the type of candidate for which they are looking before spending the time on an in-person interview. Behavioral interviews follow the traditional interview questions such as, "Tell me about yourself." This type of interview can provide the employer with some insight about your on-the-job behavior, personality, and character. You'll be asked how you've handled specific situations in the past. A question might be, describe a time when you had to overcome a stressful work situation and how you dealt with it. You'll learn how to prepare and answer these types of questions later in this workshop. Work sample interviews give applicants the opportunity to show what they have done at previous positions. This could be the type of interview for graphic artists to show their portfolios or salespeople to make a sales presentation. Peer group interviews are an opportunity to meet and talk with your prospective coworkers. They will be evaluating you to determine how you'll fit in with the team. Group interviews take place with a group of other candidates and usually more than one interviewer. Be polite and courteous with other candidates. Try to show confidence by volunteering to respond first to a few questions, but do not dominate the entire interview. When answering questions, make sure you direct your answer to the individual asking the question. Luncheon or coffee interviews can be used to assess how well you can handle yourself in a social situation. Choose your meal selection carefully and be mindful of spilling on yourself. Select healthy and easy things to eat so you can answer questions and pay attention to the conversation. This would not be the time to order a rack of ribs or anything else that is typically messy. Stress interviews recreate challenging situations you might run into on the job. The interviewer asks a number of tough questions that are designed to make you somewhat uncomfortable. For example, you may be presented with a job-related scenario and asked to explain how you would respond. Stay calm and take your time responding. Video conference interviews are typically used in order to have a face-to-face interview of sorts when you or the employer aren't in the same state or area. It saves on travel costs, but still allows for personal interaction. In many cases, you may encounter multiple interview types with the same company, depending on their hiring process. You can start with a telephone screening with someone in the HR department to determine your qualifications. If you make it to the next round, you may encounter a behavioral, work sample, or a stress interview. The employer may then yet again go through another round of interviews and meet you for lunch or coffee to make a final determination about you. Sitting in front of someone answering questions designed to reveal who you are can be a bit unnerving. It can take a lot of preparation to be able to answer questions as simple as, "Tell us a little about yourself," in a confident and coherent manner. You'll encounter a number of general questions which are typically about why you want to work there, what do you know about the company, and why should the company hire you. Some examples are, what have you done to improve your knowledge in the last year? This could be a question that's very industry specific, such as IT. Try to include improvement activities that relate to the job. A wide variety of activities can be mentioned as positive self-improvement. Make sure you are working on some educational activities. What about why do you want to work for this organization? This may take some thought and certainly should be based on the research you have done on the company. Sincerity is extremely important here. The interviewer will be able to tell if you're being honest or phony. And the last example here is, tell me about your proudest professional accomplishment. Talk about skills that are most relevant to the job for which you are interviewing. Bring up skills that you had to use to reach that achievement, such as persistence, communication skills, or problem solving. Mention any coworkers that helped you achieve success. This will show the hiring manager that you are a team player. Explain what made this moment a proud one for you. Was there an award, promotion, recognition, or other outcome that rewarded you for your efforts? Make sure whichever story you choose to tell focuses on your skills, experiences, and qualifications that make you the right fit for the job. Remember to use a balance of I and we statements. Though it is important to share how well you participate in a team, interviewers also want to know how you will contribute individually. Behavioral questions can be a lot more difficult to answer. The employer is looking for specific situations that you've encountered and how you dealt with them. Your responses will help the employer to identify how you'll respond to similar situations in the future. It's key for you to prepare for these questions as much as possible. Here are a few examples. Give me an example of how you handle setting goals. If you aren't prepared, interviewers will notice when you stumble through your answer and end up rambling. You can prepare a number of example answers that can be used for various questions. Next, can you give an example of how you solved a problem in the past? It's important to be able to show the process you go through when presented with a problem. State the problem and the steps you followed to reach the solution. And tell me about a time when you took the lead on a difficult project. Even if you haven't had the title of lead worker, supervisor, or manager, give examples of when you recognized a job needed to be done and you did it. You can use samples outside of work as long as they fit. An excellent way to prepare answers for difficult behavioral questions is to develop short stories that quickly explain the situation and a positive outcome. The STAR response technique is a way of answering behavioral interview questions. These types of questions center on how you have behaved in the past. For example, an employer might be looking for proof of problem-solving skills, attention to detail, or teamwork. Learning the STAR method will help you answer questions concisely and with a clear message. S. Situation. Describe the situation that you were in. T. Task. State the task that you needed to accomplish. A. Action. Describe the actions you took to address the situation with an appropriate amount of detail and keep the focus on you. R. Result. Describe the outcome of your actions and don't be shy about taking credit for your behavior. How did the event end? What did you accomplish? Here's an example of a STAR story for the question, how have you handled a difficult situation at work? I was part of a team working on a presentation meant to help us secure a major new client for our company. The weather was bad, and as a result, my supervisor got caught in a snowstorm and was unable to make it back in time. It looked like we were going to have to cancel the meeting and potentially lose the client. The task for this individual was, I had been looking for ways to take on more responsibility, so I volunteered to finish up the presentation. The action? I worked with my supervisor via the phone, and between the two of us, we were able to go ahead with the scheduled meeting. As a result of my initiative, we not only landed the client, but I was also recommended for a promotion. Remember to practice saying your STAR stories and create as many as you'd like, but try to have 5 stories prepared for the interview. Along with using the STAR method to develop stories to answer behavioral questions, there are a few answering techniques that can be used to turn a question that focuses on a negative instance into a positive experience. These techniques are designed to take a question that has a negative feel and turn it positive. You can also use these techniques in conjunction with the STAR method. First, the sandwich technique. So the question is, what personal weakness has caused you the greatest difficulty on the job? When responding to this, sandwich the negative information between 2 positive statements as an effective way to minimize questions with a negative connotation. So you could answer, if given a choice, I like to spend as much time as possible in front of my prospects selling. That's a positive. As opposed to shuffling paperwork back at the office. There's the negative. Of course, I learned long ago the importance of filing paperwork properly, and I do it conscientiously, but what I really love to do is sell. And this individual ends on a positive note for that question. Next, we have the softening technique. So the question is, tell me a time when you had a conflict with a coworker, and how did you handle it? You can repeat the question back using softer language. In this case, minimizing conflict with miscommunication? The response becomes, a time that I had a miscommunication with a coworker was, and then we have less is more. The question is, describe a time you made a mistake, and how did you handle it? Briefly explain what the mistake was, but don't dwell on it. Quickly switch over to what you learned and how you improved after making that mistake. You might also explain the steps you took to make sure that mistake never happened again. So you could answer this question with, I mistakenly submitted the wrong order, which caused a customer to not be happy. After correcting the order, I developed my own quality assurance process, which was then adopted by my entire team. Since then, there have been 0 incorrect orders, and the retention of our customers is at an all-time high. Your work doesn't end once the interview is over. You can't forget about what comes next, such as closing the interview, sending thank you notes, following up with your references, evaluating how the interview went, and preparing to negotiate your salary and benefits package if you're offered the position. When it's time to close the interview, always thank the interviewer for their time and interest in meeting you. Finish strong by being proactive and asking closing questions. You can ask questions like, based on our conversation today, how well do you feel I fit your candidate profile? How soon will you be making a hiring decision? If I don't hear from you in that time frame, can I contact you? What is the next step in the hiring process? Is there anything else at this time that I can provide for you about my qualifications? And remember to write down or put in your calendar the date and time of your next follow-up, if it's applicable. At some point, whether it be during the interview or after, be sure to write down the name of the person that you met with and a couple of notes about the content of the interview. You'll be able to refer back to your specific conversation and keep that rapport built. After the interview, you should always send a thank you note to each person with whom you met. The most common forms of thank you notes are letters, handwritten cards, emails, or calling and leaving a voicemail. Whichever way you choose to thank the interviewer, make it a genuine note of thanks, but also make it a point to highlight your fit and desire for the position. And never forget to follow up with your references if the company intends to contact them. First, remember that you should have identified your references even before you applied for the job. Determine who you would like to be a reference for you. Think about the different types of references needed for the interviewing process. There are 2 types, professional and character. When creating your reference list, first ask permission to use them as a reference. If they agree, ask them how they'll respond to employers and what they will say about you. It is necessary to understand how your reference will characterize you to a prospective employer, and of course ensure their contact information is current. When creating your reference list for an employer, make sure you also provide your relationship to that reference. And keep your reference informed. After you finish an interview and the employer chooses to move forward with you, they may ask for your references. Ensure that you contact your references and let them know the position for which you're applying, the requirements of the position, a brief overview of what was discussed, anything you mentioned in the interview that they could back up if called by the employer, and send your resume that was targeted specifically for this position, the cover letter, and job description to your reference so they are prepared to speak to the interviewer. Since employers won't tell you how you did immediately after the interview is over, it's up to you to evaluate your performance. Reflect on the interview. What went right? What went wrong? Ask yourself these questions. Did I arrive on time? How was my introduction? Was I confident and professional? How did I answer difficult questions? Did I speak calmly and clearly? How was my nonverbal communication? Did I ask good questions about the position, company, and culture? So what do you do if you're certain the interview didn't go well? Well, they can be stressful enough without beating yourself up. So remember, not every interview is going to be successful. Just do your best to not take it personally if you feel you could have done better. Apply what you learned from that experience so your next interview is a success. And how can you improve? Well, think back on the questions you were asked and apply them to the STAR method. Practice your responses so you're better prepared for the next interview. You can also conduct mock interviews with friends, family, or with staff from a career force location. When it comes to salary negotiation, try to avoid talking about money entirely in the initial interview. The goal is to determine fit, not bring up salary, benefits, or perks. Let the employer bring up money first. Often, they'll ask, well, what are you expecting? You can counter that with, what is the salary range for this position? You can also give a salary range instead of a definite number. Do the necessary research in order to know the salary you can reasonably accept and expect based on your experience, education, and industry wage standards for your area. Resources like Deed, Salary.com, Glassdoor.com, and CareerOneStop.org can help. Whether you intend to accept or counter the offer, always request at least 24 hours to consider. Make sure all of your questions about the offer have been answered. When negotiating, review your value, skills, experience, and education as ways to justify your desired salary, within reason, of course. You can negotiate more than just salary, but there could be a give and take. For example, less pay for more vacation. Things that you can negotiate, obviously, are salary, benefits, tuition assistance, training, vacation time, flexible schedule or working from home, as well as a 401k match and/or stock options. We learned how to prepare for the interview by researching the employer, matching your skills and experiences to the job description, being positive and dressing appropriately for the interview, and being mindful of location, drive time, and parking on the day of the interview. We talked about what to expect at the interview, such as the various types that you could encounter, how to prepare to answer questions, especially those difficult behavioral questions, using the STAR method to create short stories to quickly and concisely answer questions. Finally, we talked about what to do after the interview is over. The importance of following up not only with the interviewer to make sure you know the next steps, but also with your references to ensure they are prepared. The need to evaluate your performance in the interview, whether it was good or bad, and how to improve for the next one, and when to talk about money and how to negotiate your salary. I hope this information was helpful, and you'll be able to use it to land your next job. If you have any questions or would like additional assistance, such as conducting mock interviews, please reach out to your local career force by going to www.careerforcemn.com. Thank you.